Hey, Josie, how are you?
Hey, Mike, what's going on? It's good to see you.
It's good to see you again, too. It hasn't been that long. Was it
No,
about a month and a half or so?
I know, but it feels, yeah, time means nothing now. We have no idea about the passage of time and perception. It's all out the window.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. I'm really glad to have you on the show. So, I guess first and foremost, can you tell everybody what it's like, what a day in the life of someone who works in Ole Miss athletics is like?
I don't know that I can, as there's no typical day,
Hmm.
but I will tell you what my days are made up of. Um, I do a lot of individual meetings, whether it's therapy or meetings for performance enhancement with different athletes from all different sports, all different stages of the game in terms of where they are academically. And for some, they want to come in and just talk about whatever comes up. For others, they want to talk about anything but their sport. Like, give me 45 minutes where I don't talk about my sport at all and I'm not that person that plays that game. And then others don't want to talk about anything personal just because not much is going on, but they just want to talk about how to improve their performance. So that's where we go. And then other times I am meeting with teams or, helping them, whether it's conflict resolution, like how to communicate better or um, have more confidence, different strategies from the mental side of the game. I don't obviously do any of the X's and O's. But then also I'll consult a good bit with coaches just on, different ways to whether motivate or what do you think is going on with this player or, that sort of thing. And injury consultation is another big part of it. So I spend a lot of time like bouncing around the training room and getting to know some of the players and seeing how everybody's doing from a injury recovery standpoint. Yeah, so that's pretty much my main gig.
There's a lot in there.
It is a
Um,
lot, and then I have, other things where I kinda run the sports psych department, so we have 2 other clinicians and, just kinda making sure everybody's doing well and getting their needs met.
Awesome. So I'm curious for the student athletes that you see individually, is that something that's completely up to them to choose, or is it something that's suggested strongly, mandated? Like, what's that look like? Who chooses and how do they choose whether or not they come to see you?
Yes, it's super interesting. I would say most of my people are chose to come. We have an alcohol and drug program, and that is not always um, the choice of, of the
Hmm.
athlete. There are people that have been strongly encouraged by their coach to come for whatever reason. Um, and a lot of times it's just that the coaches really know how it's going to benefit their athletes because I've seen it in others, and the athlete may not have ever had that experience. So, kind of encouraging them to come. I'd say most of the time the athletic trainers are the ones that are kind of like, have you thought about going into sports psych and talking to one of them? It can be really helpful. And so, I'd say most of the time the athletes are choosing to come in, because their athletic trainer or their coach has said it would be a good idea, or they have a friend or roommate teammate that says it was really helpful to them.
Yeah. So you're getting referrals from different people within the organization, the athletic department, whether it's other student athletes, whether it's trainers, coaches, et cetera, right? They're sending them
Yeah.
your way.
Yeah,
Okay.
and a lot of times too, we'll go I try to make a point of making sure that at the beginning of the year, we have a little bit as an office, a little bit of FaceTime with, all the different teams, all the different athletes, just to remind them or introduce ourselves if somebody's new on campus, like, "Here we are, here's the resource, we're here for you."
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I go through that in my own practice of some people, you see them for a bit and then you don't hear from them and you have to kind of reach out to like reintroduce yourself almost to say, "Hey, how's everything going? Do you need some help?" Because it's you're out of sight, you're out of mind sometimes.
Well, and the thing okay, so freshman or transfer student comes onto campus and they are just bombarded with here's where
Mhm.
this is, here's where this person is, here's who this person is, and you know, 150 names at least in a day. And
Mhm.
they do that for 3 straight days, just trying to get their bearings.
Mhm.
How much of that are we expecting them to retain? It's like,
Mhm.
let's go through, you know, it's almost like when you are at a wedding and there's the reception line and they just, shake your hand, congratulations, shake your hand, congratulations. It's like that's kind of how it feels sometimes, where it's like,
Yeah.
You're not going to remember my name. I wouldn't expect you to. And you don't think, ooh, there's a psychologist. I'm going to tuck that back in my brain in case I ever, struggle.
Mhm.
But then in the middle of something, it could be like, seems like somebody said there was some mental health support. I can't remember what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so how many, like, so incoming, let's say incoming freshmen, like, if you had to ballpark it, like, how many of those student athletes who are new to campus, how many do you think have had some exposure to sports psychology or mental performance training before they get to Ole Miss?
Man, it's definitely on the rise. I mean, for sure. So, of our international students that come from abroad, I would probably say at least 50, 60%.
Wow.
Because they're competing at such elite levels and, a lot of tennis, a lot of golf, and that's just part of the thing, overseas, and you wanna be the best, you're gonna use every, resource available to you. So it's a big thing. Here, I don't know, that's tough to say. Um, I'd say 20% maybe? It's not a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would have, I mean, I would have guessed a much lower number here in the States, but it's interesting that overseas it's different. Is that because there's a national academy system in most countries?
So partially because of that, and partially because to get to America from overseas, you gotta be at such an elite level
Mhm.
and mainly in those individual sports, right? So, it's just kinda more of an accepted thing. I mean, if you listen to guys on and women on the PGA, and the LPGA, and you listen to, upper level, tennis players, they're all talking about their performance psychologists. They talk about their mental,
Mhm.
game a lot, and, so I think maybe even in those sports, it's more common.
Yeah. So for those more traditional team sports in the US, do you find it's more challenging to get young people on board for mental performance training or clinical services?
No, I think people are excited. I mean, especially now there's such an acceptance that mental health is a vital piece to take care of to get the best out of your performance. So, I don't think it's really a necessarily a sell. One of the things I hear often is like, "Well, I'm not really struggling. I don't really have a hard time. I didn't want to take a spot for somebody who really needs it." And like, that's not what we're about. That's not what we're doing here. It's all good. Um, and we all like can benefit, need is a strong word. And in terms of need, I mean, I'm kind of falling down a rabbit hole here, but when we talk about need, there's not a ton of my students that absolutely need this. Like, they're going to be
Right,
fine, they'll be
right.
okay, they'll have their collegiate experience and they'll move on. What I want is better than okay. I think in life we all work too hard to be good with fine. And so when somebody, you know, passes you and says, "How's it going?" And you say, "Oh, fine." If you couldn't change that to, "I'm doing great," then go do something, get some support, go talk to
Mhm.
somebody and load some of that burden so you can walk just a little bit quicker and lighter. And so that's kind of, it's not really a hard sell.
Mhm.
Especially because the performance piece, when I'm like, "Well, you wanna just increase your free throw percentage, let's chat about it," uh, is appealing and not very threatening. When I come in, I'm like, "Let's talk about your relationship with your mother." Now I'm not gonna get anybody to come in,
That's funny.
but they often, I mean, a lot of people do end up, not to blame it on moms, but just, metaphorically speaking.
Uh, Yeah, and I think that speaks to the motivation of a high level Division 1 athlete, right? Everybody they wouldn't have got to where they're at if they weren't completely dedicated to what they're doing. I think for me, like when I work with high school athletes, sometimes you get the lack of motivation because it's interfering with other priorities and they think it's sort of an extra thing to do. So it's like, well, I'm not going to put in extra time here because what's it going to do? Right. Versus like getting a 21-year-old who wants to get drafted and he's going like, I need every little edge I can get. So a lot of it for me is motivation. If I get an athlete that's motivated to work with me, like that's gold
Yeah.
because then you can get the most out of it because they're really going to invest in the process versus trying to pull teeth and say, hey, no, convince them like, hey, this is going to work. Don't trust me.
Yeah. And sometimes I wonder, like, it's so complicated and stressful to make assumptions about people, what's going on the inside, whether it's
Hmm.
motivation or passion or
Sure.
whatever. And so for me, it's easier for me to think about it as it's not the people are motivated versus not, it's the people who have made the connections or not, the people that have connected that dot between their mental game and what it takes and their performance. And
Mhm.
I think we just don't grow up with that as a foundation. We grow up with hey, if you work hard, if you're out there doing extra reps, if you're out there, you know, um, getting extra coaching and putting your all in at practice, you can achieve anything that you want to achieve, which is not true, first of all.
Mhm.
And they don't say, we praise so much the kids that are out there doing extra reps. They're in the gym throwing up the shots all the time, but not the ones that are taking care of themselves or that are, maybe doing some mindfulness training and meditation, like, because it can be like, man, I saw you in the gym throwing up those free throws and way to get the practice in. We don't say, like, I saw you meditating in the corner. That was cool. Way to get the mindfulness in. Like, you know,
No, absolutely not. And when I start working with somebody, I'll say to them like, how much time do you spend in a week, practicing your sport? And they'll be like 30 hours. And I'm like, how much time do you spend working on your mental game? 0.
zero.
Don't you think it's a little out of whack?
Yeah,
But when you put it into those terms, they start to say like, hey, if I just spend a couple of hours a week working on basic stuff, there's a big return on investment because most of the people I'm competing against are not doing what I'm doing. And so it gives me an edge over competition.
but we set it up where it's not really conducive for teenagers, right? So,
Mhm.
teenagers, and we all have that imaginary audience, like the people watching us, and for teens, that is like super, super um, exacerbated.
Mhm.
And so teens, it gets better. I promise you it gets better. I didn't think it was gonna get better. But, so the focus is on what are the coaches seeing me do? What are my parents seeing me do? What am I being known for? And it's that work ethic. Well, they need to be seeing my work ethic. And
Mhm.
so it's hard to dedicate time to something that nobody's gonna see. And that
Yeah.
becomes really difficult because you want your coach to be so impressed, and in some sports you need your coach to be impressed because they're the ones putting your name out there, and coaches want to praise the people that are like, oh, you're out here working, not you're in there working and I don't see it,
Yep.
you know
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the tangible sort of, what feedback am I getting? Right. If I'm not getting any feedback from something that I'm doing, it almost feels like it's a waste of time.
for sure.
Right. So I get that. And I think we all go through that regardless of whether or not we're an athlete or not. Like it's just anything we do in our lives. You put in a lot of work. And if it's not recognized at some level, it's going to be hard to stay motivated.
Yeah.
Um, that kind of begs the question for me. You're kind of talking about parents and coaches and things like, so when you see freshmen coming in who are now on their own for the first time, like, are there common themes or issues that you see from those freshman athletes that maybe you don't see from someone who's been around for a couple of years?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? I'm glad this is the whole
As
series.
much as you need.
Well, I could tell you that. that transition is so tough, right? And
Mhm.
so most of the time, there's a pond situation. And what I mean by that is, high school athletes have been swimming around in their pond, and maybe they went to a huge high school, but how many people are in a huge high school, right? Like, you know, 5,000, I don't know. I graduated with 32 people in my senior class, so I have no concept of a big high school, but it ain't like the state of Mississippi or whatever. So they've been swimming around in the small pond, and they're like, oh man, I'm one of the 2%. I'm a 2%er. I'm gonna go D1. This is
Mhm.
awesome. And then they get to this big pond. They're used to running the small pond. They're used to being top of the food chain.
Mhm.
Now they have to, and they've forgotten also what it was like to be in JV or middle school or freshman or whatever, where they were actually working their way up, because typically for people that level, it's been pretty easy, unfortunately, and they don't have a
Mhm.
ton of experience with failure. So they get in the big pond and they're like, what the what? I am not top dog. So a couple of things happen. Yes, you have to work your way up. And freshmen come in knowing that, but they don't understand
Mhm.
how that's going to feel. They're used to being acknowledged a lot, not just for how good they are, how talented they are, how hard they work, but for how much better they are than other
Right.
people. So when they can't look around and they get used to judging their prowess, their work, their worth, their how good they are based on how much better they are
Mhm.
than other people, and you can't do that now. So it freaks most of them out. Like,
Sure.
I thought it was, and it's hard because that motivation had shifted from that little boy or girl or other that played the game and loved the game to the one that loved the praise and the accolades and the all that kind of stuff. And now they're not getting that, and it's really hard because you've switched to external motivators, and that
Absolutely.
internal motivation has just atrophied. um, and you're not getting the reinforcement. You're not
Yep.
getting the reassurance that you are good. So also, um, it's just a lot of hard work. And,
Yeah.
the reward in high school, you work really hard, but you get rewarded very often by starts, by playtime, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Well, college is twice the work and half the reward.
Right. If that, if not more.
Yeah. Right, right. If you're really lucky to come in and get that. But
Yeah.
so that's super, super tough. And um just one other part of it that I see really commonly, that causes a lot of difficulty, is that the relationship with the coach in high school tends to be a good bit different. It is rare that a high school coach would have their entire livelihood dependent on wins, right? So they tend to pay a lot of attention to the individual. They're very, um, there's a sense like, oh man, this person really cares about who I am as a person beyond an athlete, and there there's a just a different relationship. Well, when you come to college, nobody talks to them about the fact that that relationship that you had with your high school coach wasn't a professional one. Not that that's negative. It's
Mhm.
just not what it is in college, because now it's a job, it's a professional relationship, it is a business,
Yep.
and this person may care about you as a person. Like, my boss cares about me as a person, but at the end of the day, I got to get my work done. And if I'm not, he's got to find somebody else, and it's nothing personal.
Right.
So they've never been taught to not take things personally. They've never been taught
Mhm.
what a boundaried business relationship is, and their template is not the same.
Yeah.
So they they have a sense of diminished worth because of that.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's something I talk to the athletes I work with a lot. I talk to them about empathy specifically, right? Being able to put themselves in a coach's shoes to say, hey, well, what does a coach get paid to do? Well, they get paid to win games, right? coach has to make choices. He's got 100 players on the football roster, but he can only play 22, right? Like coaches have to make hard choices because if they don't do the right thing for the team, they're going to get fired. And it's not personal because they just have to do what they need to do, right? And so I start talking to them about that at a much younger age to say like, hey, like they're not doing it to you, right? But you need to figure out what you can control and start to use the resources at your disposal to get better, right? And use that self frame of reference versus comparing myself to others. But it's really hard, right? Because they've been conditioned through high school. They're so important and so special. And now you show up and you're just like everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
So is there anything you do specifically for freshmen in terms of skills training or anything specific, any sort of curriculum that you give them coming in?
No, not particularly. I mean,
Yeah.
we do a lot of identity exploration.
Okay.
Who are you away from your sport? Do you have a hobby? Have you had a hobby? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of support, a lot of communications
Mm-hmm.
training, and like perspective taking. Because even if it's not personal, it still hurts.
Of course.
So just kind of working through that. There's some performance stuff, but a lot of times it's not a performance thing; it's an experience thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes too, it's a systems thing, meaning um, they just don't fit in the system, you know? And, uh, a coach, especially now because they recruit so young, they didn't know what the system was going to look like 3 years from the point that they recruited this kid. And now they're running, a speed offense, and this person is more of a finesse offense, like,
Mm-hmm. Right.
so that can be, hard. And yeah,
It's a lot.
yeah.
Do you see more, is it more common for one gender over another to come and see you?
It's not. Always think that that might be at some point, but it just isn't. It's pretty even across the board. I think
Mhm.
um, as long as I'm out there meeting the different teams, that's the thing that makes a difference. So if I've hung around women's soccer a lot more than I have, men's basketball, then I'm going to see more women's soccer players because they know me.
Mhm.
So that's been the difference maker over the years.
Yeah. Is the amount of time you spend with a particular team driven by a coach's philosophy or your relationship with the coach specifically?
Yes. So, and it's so funny how it just changes over time. And, sometimes there's a team that, wants me to travel with them all the time. And
Mhm.
then they get kind of to a different place, and you know, I still come in and work with them, but, it's just whatever is needed that year because every single semester the team is different.
Right.
You never have the same team semester to semester, which is because especially now with transfers,
Transfer. Right.
attrition of all sorts of reasons.
Absolutely. So how did you get into the field of sports psychology originally?
By having a really crappy college experience.
Okay, there you go.
Well, no, so I did play soccer in college, and just looking back, so I played after, like, in a variety of places and ways, and was playing for one team overseas actually, and a sports psychologist came in and was like, I want to do that. I had worked with athletes from a counseling perspective in my graduate program, and knew I kind of really liked that population. But when I
Mhm.
saw the performance piece at work, I was like, I'm going to pursue that pretty hardcore. And just, it appeals to me because I was, when I stopped playing college soccer and just started playing soccer, I loved it, and
Mhm.
I played so well. Like, I just got better and better every year, and I was like, if I had you know well, let's be honest. If I had been where I was supposed to be in college, which was in a therapist's office
Yep.
all the time, then I would have, just had so much more fun and been happier as a person, and, that's kind of the way my journey had to be. But I want to be a resource for anybody who wants a different experience for their college. Not saying that everybody needs that to have a great
Right.
college. I definitely would have benefited, um, but I definitely want to be there for anybody uh, that thinks it would make it a better experience.
Yeah. It's interesting. My ex-wife played college soccer as well, and I think the word that she used quite often was traumatized.
Yeah,
So she had a really like challenging college experience for coaches and things like that. And so it's a shame that it has to be that way, right? But it's just the reality of life, right? And it's the same thing when you're recruited, like you said, like it's all sort of sunshine and rainbows, right? Like this seems like the best place ever. And then you go there and you show up and you're practicing, 20 hours a week and you have to deal with all the nonsense that might go on, politics and relationships and personalities. And it's like, it's not fun anymore. It becomes a job. And oh, by the way, you've got to do another job in the classroom. And oh, by the way, you've got to have a social life and you've got all these demands on your time. And it's like, well, how do I prioritize it? Especially if you're not getting the return athletically, you're going to be like, well, you know what? I'm not going to put in the extra work. I'm going to go have a good time. And it's just more fun that way. But I'm still not satisfied with my performance, right? So it's like this like
circle,
circle,
yeah.
right? Just running in a circle.
Well, and I think that there are plenty of people that go in and have a great experience
Right.
playing collegiate sports, even soccer,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones that I notice have that are the ones that even whether or not they may be riding the bench, they may be on the
Mm-hmm.
field, but they're enjoying their time,
Mm-hmm.
they're enjoying the process, they're enjoying their role, they're enjoying the
Mm-hmm.
experience rather than looking
Right.
for stuff that they can't control, like playing time.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the ones too that are paying attention to what they're doing rather than constantly chasing um, somebody's approval or somebody's opinion. And when you pay attention to what you are doing, guess what? You do
You're
it
better
better.
at it. Exactly. You're doing it right. But wouldn't you say like this is my experience, wouldn't you say that it's the vast minority of athletes that are in that bucket of enjoying the process? Because that's what I see. I see a lot of perfectionism with my athletes. I see a lot of anxiety, performance anxiety, a lot of comparisons,
Hmm.
and not many of them are enjoying the process. And it is a really difficult thing
Yeah,
to unwind.
yeah, for sure, for sure. There's a quote from Mia Hamm, and it's like somewhere behind all the hours of training and all the hard work and all the coaches who pushed you is a little girl that fell in love with the game. Play for her. And we get into our heads so much about
Mhm.
like, oh, what is he seeing, or did he see that pass, or gosh, there goes my opportunity, or whatever. And the mistakes become debilitating when really
Yeah.
that's the only way you get better.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so much of that has to do with the way you're conditioned, growing up. When people make you believe it's not okay to make a mistake, well, how are you supposed to react? You can't look at the mistake as an opportunity to learn. You look at it as there's something wrong with me.
Right.
you know,
Right.
it's not healthy because, it's just not sustainable.
Right.
Um, One of the things I think about, and I think I know the answer to the question, but I'm going to curious to explore because you sort of touched on it, which is the idea of programmatic fit, right? Kids coming into a program that's a fit for them. And what I see and I've heard from other people is kids are looking for the biggest and best offer, the biggest name, the most recognition, notoriety, because they want to be able to promote themselves, right? Sort of that same idea of look at me, like as compared to everybody else. And then you get into a program and it's not what you think what you imagined it to be, even though you get the biggest possible name you could get because you weren't really looking at all the factors. Do you get involved in recruiting at all or like selection of players? Is there any element like of sort of, like they would do in the NFL, like they sort of do like profiling and things like that? Do you get into that? I imagine you don't, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Now, I will say there are times that scouts come to me and the players have written in a release, I don't really like it because they're not going to get information from me
Hmm.
except what they need, So
Right.
like the MLB sends a lot of scouts to do personality measures or, things like that. But um and I always, just kind of let them know like the privacy of my clients, even though they've signed this release, is still my top priority, but I also want to give the information that's going to be helpful in what the athlete wants, right? So that's kind of dicey, but I do not get involved in recruiting so much as I do meet players coming through. But if they're coming through on official visits, that means that typically the coaches want them. So not much that I'm going to say is going to change a coach's mind, but so here's the thing. From the time you're a freshman or sophomore in high school to the time you graduate, you are going through some rapid change in terms of identity formation. And especially for high achievers, a lot of times one of these things that reduces anxiety is having a plan and knowing what to expect. Like a lot of athletes are like that. Like that's what they do. They really try to anticipate what's going to happen and prepare for it, right? So once there's a name in the head, like I'm going to go to Ole Miss, it can be scary to change that because that has lowered so much anxiety, and it's like I know where I'm going. I don't have to worry about it. Whew. But they're just not asking the right questions.
Right.
They're asking, what is, what are you ranked? What are what's funny is like I talked about, playing college soccer. You didn't ask me where I played, like, and it doesn't matter
Right.
because at this point in my life, anywhere that I would have played, like my dad played football at Maryland during a time when people were like, "Oh, that's badass." But when was the last time somebody called Maryland badass in football, right? So, no offense to anybody, they have really,
No,
really,
you're on point.
really cool uniforms. But you know what I'm saying? There was a
Yeah.
time when it was like, "Oh, they're
Yeah.
contenders," and so in 20 years, which seems like a lifetime away, people rarely ask me where I played. Because
Hmm.
it really it doesn't matter. I don't remember minutes on the field. I remember these really funny stories on the bus. I remember
Hmm.
the preseason that our coach thought was a good idea to go alligator hunting in a swamp for team building. Like, I know that's a whole other podcast, but it's like people are asking the wrong questions.
Yeah.
Questions like, um, what does, let's see, what's the graduation rate? Does this university have a variety of majors in the general areas that I'm interested in so that if I decide to change my major, that's not going to be a huge deal?
Hmm.
What is the team like in terms of, do you have a lot of bonding? Do they have get togethers like
Hmm.
spaghetti dinners and stuff like that? Like these, these are the important questions. So I just, it's frustrating to see kids make um, these choices based on things that are going to be so irrelevant, possibly by the time they come in.
Right.
Yeah,
But I think, right, some of that has to do with cognitive development, right?
yeah, for sure.
Right. Like in terms of, just wanting rewards and not really thinking ahead in terms of what are the long term consequences of this, all those things. But at the same time, I agree. Like it's something I've seen it actually. I had a client who was in high school, was signed as a sophomore to go play Division I baseball.
Hmm.
And he got to college. And when he got to college, he found something very different than what he thought he was going to find. And it was a very difficult first year for him because of the culture,
Yeah,
right? And those are the kinds of questions that could be really hard for someone to ask, right? Like, what's the culture? What's the coaching style? What's the feedback mechanism, right? What are the expectations, right? Very hard questions for certainly for a high school kid to ask, but even a family, especially when there's money attached to an offer and there's prestige and an education, it's almost like you don't want to ask those questions because you're afraid to hear the answer, or you're going to alienate yourself or lose your offer, whatever it is, right? But at the end of the day, like, you have to live there for 4 years, and now what do we see happening? People are they're in the transfer portal left and right.
Yeah. And it's
They're
costly.
leaving their schools left and right every week. We see
Yes.
something.
Yeah. And, I think that most of the time there's a message being sent to make sure that you would want to go to your school, even if you didn't play. But there are other things too, like, I don't know, if you wanted to rush, would they allow for that? Or if
Right.
you wanted, I don't know. There's a lot more to, because I mean, what we talked about before with the dopamine surges, the reward system that gets lit up as a
Mm-hmm.
teenager when somebody gives you an affirmation, right? When we believe, which is just a perception, we believe that somebody thinks well of you, that seems so vital. But because of brain formation in 10 to 15 years, it's just not as important. And it's more important that you are happy, that and that comes from within rather than from without. And so it's kind of um it's kind of hard because you're making decisions based on a brain that is going to be different in 10 years.
Okay, so
And
the
most
other side of that is, yeah, you're right. But
Yeah.
the other side of that too is, right, you've got parents,
Mm,
right? Now, what I've heard in many conversations is, if I'm a coach, I want to deal directly with the athlete,
yes.
right?
100%.
100%, right? And I agree with that, right? The athlete has to take ownership. They need to be motivated. I don't want to hear from mom and dad. But at the same time, like, mom and dad need to be a sort of a governor in that process, right? Because it's like, hold on a second here. Like, why are we making this choice? Like, yeah, I
Mhm.
want it to be your decision, but how much interaction do you, or more generally, the athletic coaches and department have with parents at that level, in the SEC?
Well, it really depends on the team and the coach for different coaches. I know
Mm-hmm.
that every kid, I mean, I have two boys, and, I already know one of them's going to the Olympics. Now it'll be 2034 and I'll be going to Brisbane, but, um, we all think that our kids are so uniquely special, and it is impossible for me to look at something happening with my kids with an objective eye. Like, that just doesn't, I can't. There's no way.
Absolutely.
Um, and it's weird. My husband and I were talking about, like, we had ridiculously good looking babies, but there are times when I look back, I'm like, I don't even remember him looking like that. And it's because you're just filled with oxytocin. You can't see straight. So that's an important thing
Mm-hmm.
because the coach has all these different, um, needs of the team to balance. So I found that there's very, very little. And when there is, it's usually, a lot of times it's pretty messy, but it does depend on the team and the coach a lot of times. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm always curious about that because I'm a parent too, and I have my own kids, and they play sports, and it is very difficult to be objective. And even when you're objective, right, they still don't see it that way, right?
Right. Yeah.
So having people in your circle that are not your parents or are objective but supportive is critical. But I mean, I didn't play sports in college, but I know how hard that transition was, right? Just in terms of leaving home and showing up and trying to figure out how to live my life on my own. And so then you add this other responsibility in, which, from what I understand and I've heard, is that the structure actually probably benefits the student athlete quite a bit because they're told where to be, when to be, what to do, and it sort of keeps them out of trouble. Whereas I didn't have that response, I didn't have that thing, but I also didn't have the responsibility of performing. For you, when you were an athlete, like, what was that transition like from high school to college?
I'm probably not the typical example. So I just had a crazy journey. Like I went to boarding school and then kind of went from like a super religious boarding school to a town where the drinking age was 18. So it was like, you pretty rough just to go from super, super structured to, for me, it was much less structured and was a lot more freedom. Um, whereas, uh, I think for a lot of athletes, it's kind of the opposite, you know, you go from all this freedom and all this support to a lot of structure, not a lot of support.
Where was the drinking age 18?
New Orleans. Yeah, that's how old I am.
Where did you go?
Loyola.
Did you?
Yeah.
My It's so funny. My ex-wife went to Tulane.
Oh, yeah. I
And
went
she
to
played
Tulane
soccer
for
there. She played soccer there, and it was a disaster.
well, I went there for a week and transferred, so, yeah. It's, it's not for everybody, for sure.
I've heard some pretty wild stories.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like, for somebody else, Tulane was probably the perfect fit.
Well, I think school-wise, she loved it. Soccer-wise, I think it was a different story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I don't know where you go from there,
Right. Yeah.
oh
I think
goodness.
it's really interesting to look at that, though, because, um, the more so parents aren't just there doing the laundry or cooking or whatever, because I mean, you kind of figure that out. But it's more just it's kind of like hitting home base.
Hmm.
When you're in a game of tag, you're running around and you hit home base just every now and then, just so you know it's close. And you can run around. You think you can outrun the person. That's cool. But I'm every now and then just going to touch this home base to make sure. And it's, you don't have that. And it can be really scary,
Hmm.
and the dorms, I don't understand. You couldn't pay me to have a roommate now, but it blows my mind to look at dorm rooms and think I lived in one of those for 2 years. Now, I mean, I had come from boarding school where I had a roommate for 6 years also, but I don't know, just to be in college, to have somebody that's living in your room that has, because I mean, in boarding school, like we had the same time we woke up, the same time we got from school, same time we got back from work, same time we went to dinner, same time we went to bed. So if, there's no like, man, I need to go to bed at 9 and my roommate likes to stay up till 11 and make out with her boyfriend on the top bunk right above me. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
There's none of that. So it is, um, you have to have a lot of conversations that freshmen don't have. I think that's a really difficult thing is freshmen don't know how to be assertive. They're either
Hmm.
doormats or aggressive. And
Right.
it's like, okay, how do we talk through what I need? Um,
Yes.
and you go in like, oh my God, my roommate's so nice. And we listen to the same kind of music. And I can't believe that, I lucked out so much. And that's like, hey, I hate her. I'm gonna cut off her hair in her sleep. Like it goes there pretty quickly because of those conversations that they've never been taught to have.
Right. Well, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before about boundaries, right? Not only business boundaries, but just in life, right? Like you're used to living with a family where those boundaries get blurred all the time. And you're
Yes.
not used to living with strangers where, there's a way to have a conversation so that it's not personal. It's just, hey, let's figure out how to make this work. And I think that that's just part of the maturation process.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So, like on the back end of it, right, when you're starting to get seniors going out into the world, right, how much are you talking to the student athletes about retirement and this could be the end and my identity and what that means for me in the future? Like, how much does that comes up in your practice?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot because I mean, if they're transitioning to the next level of their sport, whatever it is, I think, those are different conversations. And I have already been working with those athletes for a while on this idea of it could end tomorrow,
Hmm.
whether you're drafted or not. You're a sophomore, you could be done tomorrow anyway. So what are you going to do? with today, and what's your plan B? I always believe this whole, like, there's no plan B. You gotta have a plan B if
Right.
you wanna, like, I love my job, I'm passionate about my job. I am not gonna, like, I don't see myself voluntarily leaving my job, and yet I have a plan B. Like, if something happens, because it's
Right.
athletics and, the world is crazy, and, I couldn't work here, I would be devastated. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, I would be so it would take me a bit, and then I'd get out of my bed after a week, and I'd go execute my plan B. I know
Right.
exactly what it is and how to do it. And I think that keeps me, honest in my game, like, I'm able to go play my own game rather than trying to please everybody else,
Hmm.
and,
Right.
make decisions based on what's right, whether rather than what's gonna piss somebody off. So we have already been talking about that, and so, it's not as scary to put yourself out there. I mean, that's all sports is putting yourself out there and being vulnerable.
Yep.
And so with the other, it is such a for some of them, they're just ready. They're ready to be done,
Right.
you know? And some that are do really, really well. Just done. I've done my time, right? And,
Hmm.
or they're excited about their career and
Right.
they're ready to get going in that and explore other parts of their identity that they
Yeah.
haven't had time,
Yep.
to do. And so, but other times it's a real grief process.
Mhm.
And scary, like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I mean, I had somebody on the podcast not too long ago who went through that. He went through depression and attempted suicide because everything was tied up in his performance as an athlete. He thought he was going to go professional, and then he was injured and it ended. And he
yeah,
just could not make peace with that for a number of years until he found something else that he was like immersed in and was passionate about, and he had a purpose every day. But until that point, it was like, why me? And I could see that, right?
yeah,
So he's yeah. So it's I definitely see that a lot with athletes, and the ones who even the ones who they get hurt temporarily. You have an injury and you're out for a month.
it's an
Like,
existential crisis.
it's an existential crisis. So what am I going to do? I can't contribute. Like, this is who I am, and now like they're going on without me, and
Yeah,
it's just really really challenging. And so there's just so much that goes with the process of being an athlete. And I think, one of the things that I'm sure you subscribe to this on a level, we all have our own philosophy of practice, but like, the person's got to come first for me. It's like
for sure.
they're way more than just an athlete.
Yeah,
And I think sometimes I would imagine, especially in a place like Ole Miss, sometimes you might feel like a commodity, right? You just feel like a cog in the wheel because it is a business, and that's just the
yeah,
reality of it. That's why it takes the internal work to like insulate yourself, because all this other stuff's happening around you no matter what.
yeah,
Right. And
right,
you
right,
have to take control of the process, and you can't let it control you.
exactly. It's so funny. There's a song that I really, really love called "Superstar" by Cypress Hill. It's so good, and, it has this message of, like, there's always somebody that coming along that's
Hmm.
gonna be better, that's so just, and one of the things he says is, um, "It's a fun job, but it's still a job," you know? And I think about that so much, like, this is a fun job, but it's still a job, and that means that we have to take care of ourselves, we have to, make sure even though I'm having, a blast, for example, traveling on a trip with football, I have to make sure that I am doing the things like going to bed and doing the mindfulness, stuff that I do and all those kind
Hmm.
of things because I can get caught up in the fun and it doesn't feel like a drain, like something else that I'm not enjoying would. And so I think that piece of it is important to look at whether you're transitioning into college or transitioning out, that you can forget about your needs with all the novel and all the new,
Mm,
you know?
I love that.
Yeah, and, you get a when you're taking care of your whole person, then you have your whole person to play with, and when you put your whole person on the field, you just perform better.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've never heard it put that way. I think that's a really nice picture to paint for an athlete. They can get that, right? Which is so
Yeah.
much of what we do is being able to communicate and educate in a framework that the athletes that we work with get.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you could be like up here over their head and they don't get it, right? But that paints a picture of like, hey, if you just bring yourself and all of yourself, you're going to be fine.
It's terrifying. That is terrifying.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, because what if you put your whole self out there with
Right.
everything you have and it's not good enough?
Yeah.
That's going to happen sometime,
It does.
Yeah.
Well after well after college into adulthood,
That is for
it
sure.
happens all the time for me.
I was thinking about this the other day, and this is kind of a stretch of an analogy, but in my mind, it was perfect because of the feelings involved. So, my son, 4 years old last year, was so excited about Christmas, and he is just so cute. And I would give him the world. So he said, "We should decorate my room." And so I was like, "Do you want to decorate your room?" And he's like, "No, but I do want to decorate it." And I was like, "Buddy, I am with you in so many things in life. Right there. I want it done, but I don't necessarily want to do it." So I had gotten off work early one day and I went crazy. I decorated his room. I put a little tree in there and I decorated the tree and I put like lights around and everything like that. And I was so excited and I was like, "This is going to be so awesome. It's going to be so great." He came home and he looked at it and he's like, "Mommy, there's nothing on the ceiling." He was just like,
Right.
now he loved it but he had this picture of in his mind
Right.
of how it was going to be. And, and my feelings were hurt,
Yeah.
like, I was so hurt, and so that happens both ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
where you put your heart and your soul into something, and somebody else is like, "Eh," and the mistake I made was that I didn't accept that it wasn't for my son, because it really
Right.
wasn't, like, I wanted it
Right.
decorated, to have for him and all that kind of stuff, but then also we go in with expectations thinking, we want the tinsel on the ceiling and the whole nine, and we miss the amazing tree that has been built for us.
Right. Exactly. We're focused on what we don't have versus
Exactly.
being grateful for what we do have. And that's just,
Yeah.
it's a struggle.
Yeah.
It's a
And so
struggle.
maintaining the focus that's going to be sustainable
Mhm. Right.
when we're going through transitions.
Absolutely.
So important.
So important. All right. So two more questions.
Yeah.
One is, are there any books that you suggest to your athletes or recommend to your athletes that you think can help them?
Yes. Absolutely. Did you want the names? I'm just kidding. So, yeah.
Yeah. And they are?
So the one that I end up actually recommending the most is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
Yep.
It's about this idea of putting your whole self out there, and experiencing the fear and why do we have that fear and how to push through that and why would we want to push through that.
Mhm.
Um, the second one is actually Darren Hardy's Compound Effect, which is a short read, very, very practical about just building on tiny, tiny differences and having the belief, the sure confidence that it's gonna play out. And the other one, hang on one second. The other one I was looking up there that I end up recommending a lot is The Power of Habit because it's a fun read. Now there's a ton of fun information in it, but I mean, good information that's practical. But it is a fun read.
The Power
Really,
of Habit's one of my favorite books.
it's a good
Probably
one.
one of the most influential books I've ever read. I've read Daring Greatly too, and I love Brene Brown stuff. I have not read The Compound Effect. I'm definitely going to have to check that out, especially if it's a short read, because I
It's a
find
short read and it's super practical. It's like, okay, here's three things you do because of the information in this chapter. Um, so really good for people looking for practical things to incorporate.
so. The last question is, and I ask this to everybody: if there's one suggestion you could make to a student athlete who's listening, um, particularly high school student athletes or moving up to college, what would it be?
love the game or find what you love.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because there's so much around. I mean, do you love the game or do you love the notoriety? Do you love the game or do you love the look on your parents' faces when you score? Do you love the game or do you love the free ride to college? Which, I mean, don't discount that. If you can do it as a job, it's better. I've done the math with so many athletes, man, about, okay, if you got a job, let's look at what you would be making and what you could, how many hours you could work and go to school, and the math just doesn't work out, you know? So if you can work that job, it's an intense job, um, it can be better than some other jobs. Um, so there's, you know, no issue with that, but know what you're getting into. Um, and if you don't love it, find what you love and go for that.
It's good advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. It was great talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate
It
this.
was my pleasure. This was
Yeah,
great, and hopefully we can do it again sometime in the future.
that would be fun.
Thanks, Josie.
All right, have a good one.
You too.